Well, this morning we're going to be continuing with that series we started for March, talking about Unity's version of Lent. We do things a little bit differently in Unity, and we're going to be working with ideas from two books. One is called Keep a True Lent by Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore. The other book is a more recent one called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Reese. So the Unity approach to Lent, I think we can probably sum up with this one paragraph that we've been working with here. This is from the foreword to Fillmore's book, Keep a True Lent. This is what it says. Each one of us must be concerned with improving his own life. We must learn to deny our selfish impulses and be obedient to impulses of brotherly love. When we withdraw our attention, interest, and support from the false and the unworthy, this is true fasting. When we give that same attention, interest, and support to the enduring good, we are feasting on the things of spirit, and this is true prayer. We're fasting from our limited, self-centered way of looking at the world. We're giving up the false and the unworthy, and instead we're focusing on what we like to call here the true, the good, and the beautiful. So today we're going to draw on the wisdom of the four agreements, and this time we're going to be looking at the second agreement, which tells us don't take anything personally. This ties in to what Fillmore was talking about there, because this agreement helps us to get in touch with our selfish impulses, right? There's nothing more self-centered than taking everything personally. So we're going to get in touch with our selfish impulses so that we can see them, move away from them, and then find ways to be a greater expression of compassion in the world, which the world desperately needs right now. You know, the challenge we face as human beings is that we all have this thing that we call an ego. It's necessary, but it can get out of control because the ego has this strong tendency to take everything personally. To the ego, it's all about me. It's all about protecting an image. And this is an image that has been carefully and painstakingly built up over the course of a lifetime. So the ego has a vested interest in protecting it. You know, why is it that people can remember some silly and embarrassing moment from third grade with crystal clarity, right down to every little detail, from the expression on your face to the way it felt? I mean, I have no idea what that might be like, but maybe some of you do. I heard some reaction out there. We remember that time 30 years ago when we did this or that, and that is a threat to this ego-driven self-image, right? And what the ego needs to know, and what we need to know, is this. Guess what? Nobody remembers it. Nobody remembers it the way we do. Unless you blew up a toilet with a cherry bomb or something like that. Nobody remembers it. I'm not that important. You see, that's what the ego thinks. I'm so important that everyone around me is going to remember every little thing that I did. Every little mistake is going to be indelibly burned in their consciousness because I'm just such a massive superlative presence, right? That everybody, that's what the ego does, right? What we did is not that memorable, but the ego begs to differ. Everyone around me lives to remember my errors and achievements. So that's why it can be so difficult to stop taking things personally. That's what we're up against. You know, the truth is, again, all that stuff from the past, nobody remembers it. It wasn't about us. Let it go. Isn't that a relief? Yeah. Isn't that a relief? And if, on the off chance that there really is someone out there who's been hanging on to a memory of some silly thing that we did from 30 years ago, well, they've got their own psychological problems to deal with. And once again, it's not about us, it's about them. Let it go. There's a neat quote that I like from Martha Graham, the renowned dancer and choreographer. She's been called the Picasso of dance. She was doing something new and revolutionary when it came to choreography and dance, so as you might imagine, people were being rather harshly critical of her. She had to endure a lot of unsolicited commentary, as do many artists when they're taking risks. This is her advice to us. She says, what people in the world think of you is really none of your business. It's not about me, it's about them, and that's none of my business. You know, it's bad enough when someone makes a comment directly to us, and then it gets even worse when the ego gets involved, because the ego likes to guess. Even if somebody's not telling us directly, the ego will actually sit there and tell a story about what that person might be thinking about us based on body language, a facial expression, maybe a single word that gets dropped and it's off to the races, and there's this whole story being told, and the fact of the matter is we don't know. The ego thinks it's a mind reader, but we don't know. So in the Four Agreements, the author says this. He says, when we take something personally, we make the assumption that they know what is in our world, and we try to impose our world on their world. Even when a situation seems so personal, even when others insult you directly, it has nothing to do with you. Their point of view comes from all the programming they received during domestication. That's a term that he uses throughout this book, by the way, domestication. It's the term that he uses to describe the way that we're programmed or conditioned, which starts in childhood. We grow up measuring everything we do or think according to whether mommy and daddy would approve or disapprove. That's how it all gets started. And later on, of course, we have substitutes for mommy and daddy: teachers, peer group, culture, co-workers, and so on. We learn early on to measure our self-worth by looking outside to other people for validation, and it goes on. And once that message gets programmed into us, it's off to the races. Other great sages of the ages saw this too. This is from a Chinese Taoist teacher from the 4th century. He said it like this. He said, "The ambitious run day and night in pursuit of honors, constantly in anguish about the success of their plans, dreading the miscalculation that might wreck everything. Thus, they are alienated from themselves, exhausting their real life in service of the shadow created by their insatiable hope." What a way to live, huh? What a way to live. So one of the biggest ways we exhaust ourselves is by taking everything personally. Don Miguel says that when we take things personally, we're secretly agreeing with what the other person is saying. They're offering us a gift of poison, and we're accepting it. We're accepting it, and then we're letting it create what he calls a dream of hell. That's pretty strong language. Accepting a gift of poison and using it to create a dream of hell. Even when life is good, even when life is undeniably, objectively good, we still have this tendency to hang on to those little comments. Some of them careless, some of them intentional. As I say, sometimes not so careless, it's intentional. There are people, believe it or not, who actually try to get under our skin and inside our heads, right? They want us to take whatever they have to say very seriously and very personally. You got to be really careful. We have to be very careful about letting someone get inside our head. Here's another line from the Four Agreements. They can hook you easily with one little opinion and feed you whatever poison they want, and because you take it personally, you eat it up. They say the word, and just like a fish on the line, you're hooked. They dangle the bait. Ever wonder why people feel the need to do that? You know, they know it's, you know, most fish probably have an idea. Well, gee, that looks great. Kind of looks like a hook there, but maybe not, and they go for it anyway. Why do human beings do that? It's usually because of our own emotional garbage, right? There's this sense of insecurity, and so these people think that they have to go on the offensive. They have to go on the offensive to try to tear people down so they can feel a little more secure, and this cycle just goes on and on and on. So someone comes and presents their emotional garbage, we take it personally, and what we're really saying to the world is, thank you, may I please have some more. That's the way it works. So it's insidious, but it can be dealt with. You know, I think we've probably all found it helpful to have some real life examples to draw upon in situations like this. You know, we might ask the question, what would so-and-so do? Right? You know, for some people, they like to ask, what would Jesus do? But I mean, if you're not Christian, you can select all sorts of other people to serve as a role model. In fact, last fall in our series we did on that book called Resilient by Rick Hansen, he talked about the same thing, this idea of having role models and people to draw upon their life images and things to help us in these kind of situations. Doesn't have to be a real person, he told us. Doesn't have to be a real person. Sometimes a movie character works just as well. And when it comes to not taking things personally, my role model comes from the movie The Big Lebowski, starring Jeff Bridges. Jeff Bridges plays this very laid-back character called the Dude. As we find out in the opening scene of the movie, he's the man for that time and place. He fits right in there, right? That's how he goes around wearing shorts and a bathrobe and sandals and so on. His favorite pastime is bowling. So in the story, in the movie, one day before the big bowling tournament, the Dude is practicing at a bowling alley, and his bowling nemesis is going after him. He's going to trash talk him because they're going to be in this tournament together, so he's going to trash talk him. There he is. There is his nemesis. And because this is one of those Coen Brothers movies, I can't even begin to come close to telling you the actual language that he's using in this scene. So I'll give you a rough translation about how he's trying to get inside the Dude's head before the big tournament. And here's the translation. He's saying basically, Mr. Dude, you're not a very skilled bowler, and my team is going to beat you decisively in the upcoming tournament. That's as best I can do. It's a hilarious scene. So in the next scene here, there's the great comeback. This is not taking it personally, brought to the level of mastery. He looks up at him and says, yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man. All laid back there. And that's how it works. The Dude knows how to not take things personally. The Dude knows that the best way to deal with trash talk is to simply abide. The Dude abides. That's kind of an archaic word, but I think it fits here. It's an archaic word which simply means to wait patiently for something, or to endure without yielding, or to accept without objection. Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man. And the reason the Dude is so good at abiding and not taking things personally is because he meditates. We find that out in the movie. He meditates. He does Tai Chi. You see, the Dude practices mindfulness. He has this special rug that he likes to do Tai Chi on, which is a story in and of itself in the movie. But he practices mindfulness, which we talk about a whole lot around here, don't we? But we're learning again and again how helpful it is in so many situations. There's an article on the UC Berkeley website about how practicing mindfulness can lead to greater and healthier self-esteem. You see, self-esteem by itself, not always a good thing. You can get too much of that, but healthy self-esteem. You know, people with low self-esteem, they're the ones who tend to look outside themselves for validation. They're the ones who tend to compare themselves to others, and of course, they have a greater tendency then to take things personally. They're easy to hook, right? Well, the study found 4 ways that mindfulness practice can help with self-esteem, to help us to stop looking outside ourselves for validation and getting hooked. So, the first way it helps is it teaches us to label internal experiences with words. When we do that, we avoid getting consumed by self-critical thoughts and emotions. First thing we learn in mindfulness practice is how to simply label a thought or a sensation without getting all caught up in a story about it. The second thing it does is it helps us to practice a non-judgmental attitude towards those thoughts and emotions. It helps us to have a natural and accepting attitude toward the self, how to abide. And the other thing it teaches us is how to be with whatever is happening without clinging to it. You know, so often we think that a situation is permanent, when in fact what we learn in meditation is that these things pass from one thought to the next, from one sensation to the next. So we learn how to be with it without glomming onto it and without trying to push it away. A non-judgmental attitude is one in which we abide. Sometimes they call it non-attachment. Now, another thing that can happen in mindfulness meditation is that we learn how to sustain our attention right on the present moment. We avoid getting caught up in self-critical thoughts that relate to the events from the past or worrying about stuff in the future. We stay in the present and we stay centered. And that, again, is one of the best ways to help us to learn how to let go of those memories from the past that keep coming back to haunt us, and nobody really remembers it anyway. Okay, last thing that we can learn from mindfulness is letting these thoughts and emotions enter and leave our awareness without reacting to them, which is another way of saying taking them personally. Regular practice teaches us how to see the ego, to see the programming, to get around it and not take things personally. We're not going to kill the ego. I've said that before, and it's worth repeating. If we have this attitude that we're going to kill the ego, that is a form of egotism. No, we're simply going to see it for what it is and choose to do something else. You know, when I use that word programming, think of it just like software, especially the kind of software that's always running in the background, right? How many of you have taken your computer to a technician because it's running too slowly? And then you're astounded to find out, and the tech shows you how much garbage is running in the back room, taking up space, slowing everything down. I think we have a graphic of that. All these things that could be running in the background that we need to let go, get rid of. You don't need it, but there it is. So mindfulness can be like running a computer cleanup tool. We get to decide what programs are going to keep running in the background and which ones that we're going to release. Okay, so I want to finish up today just with a word of caution. Not taking things personally is not the same as not taking responsibility. Okay? If I'm in school and I get a paper back with a D on it, I'm not going to send a note back to the teacher saying, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man. Right? I might say that to myself just as a little reminder not to take it personally, and it shouldn't be personal. They're not saying that you're a bad person, that you are somehow intellectually insufficient. It's just that on this particular paper you didn't live up to the expectations or what was the what the grading criteria was for that paper. That's it. So when we take things personally, it gets the emotions charged up, which gets in the way of discernment. We want to get those emotions calmed down. We learn how to not take things personally. We have our discernment established as an open and honest process so that we can take that feedback, that unfortunate D, for what it is. Information that may or may not, but in this case is probably useful. A little clue to take a look at maybe where you could have done better, and you'll know where to focus your attention and energy in the future. All right, so that's all for today on the second agreement. We're going to go on with the rest of them, but Karen and I are having a little vacation this week, so we won't be here next Sunday. And people always ask us, we say, oh, we're going on vacation, and we inevitably say, where are you going? Where are you going? And I was trying to think of a way to tell people what we're doing in a way that sounds kind of interesting and exciting. And I told Karen this morning, maybe we should say that we're going to be nurturing our environment. Spring cleaning. But a good time to get caught up on all that. So we won't be here next Sunday, but I do want to introduce our guest speaker for next Sunday. Pixie DeFore is going to be back. You'll actually get to hear from her instead of John, and so she'll be here next Sunday, and then we'll be back in 2 weeks, and looking forward to it, and we'll see you then. Thank you.